to the Inspired Hygiene Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Wall. I'm an RDH and founder of Inspired Hygiene. For over 20 years, we've had the unique opportunity to see what really happens inside thousands of dental hygiene ops and what it takes to create transformational change that impacts the lives of patients, practice owners, and teams. Each season, we'll focus on one powerful topic, breaking it down with practical strategies, real stories, and tools you can use right away. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you back to the Inspired Hygiene Podcast. So if you've made it this far, I'm hoping that you listened to season one. Season one was all about hot topics. I really wanted to, as we were launching this podcast, really get right into it, get right into some of the topics that are top of mind for so many dental practice owners, for dental teams, dental hygienists, and industry experts as well. And just anybody that's really observing what is happening in the dental industry right now as it relates to dental hygiene in the general dental practice. And so if you haven't had a chance to go back and listen to season one, I would encourage you to do that. It was fantastic. And I also had an opportunity in season one to introduce you to some of our Inspired Hygiene team. And so you got to meet Jennifer, our director of operations, and our coaches, Emmy, Catherine, Connie, and just really hear their expertise and what they're seeing real life out in the field, as they're all of us are dental hygienists. So what they're seeing in the field from the perspective of a dental hygienist, and also from the perspective of a coach, and what we're seeing our clients struggle with and where we're really seeing them have success as well. So invite you, if you haven't already, to go back and watch the first few episodes. Those are season one. And now we are launching today, season two. And the reason why I decided to structure the podcast in seasons is because I wanted you to be able to have bingeable content that was around a specific theme. So I love listening to podcasts. I have a ton of them that I follow in the industry and outside of the industry. And most of them, I would say the topics kind of come and go. They're all over the place, right? Depending on the guests that they have, or maybe what is an urgent topic that's happening right now in their particular field. But I wanted to do this a little differently, and I wanted to structure this in these seasons so that you could look through and say, hey, season two is all about this most common missed opportunity in hygiene, and I want to learn all about that. Or maybe you want to refer this, send it to a colleague or send it to a team member. Say, hey, just go through and listen to season two. It'll all make sense. Every episode builds on the other. And that's really why we're structuring it this way, at least for now. We'll see how the podcast develops. But this is season two, and this one is all about the number one most common missed opportunity in hygiene. I have been a hygienist for over 30 years. I have been running Inspired Hygiene for over 20 years. And over that time, we have coached thousands of hygienists. And then if you combine all the hygiene teams, the dentists, everybody that we've spoken to, either virtually or live at a conference, it is probably in the tens of thousands. And what I have learned over the years is that we are more the same than we are different. And while every dental practice is unique and every dental professional has their unique set of experiences, we have so much in common. And I have had the unique opportunity to hear dental team members and dental practice owners across the US, and even a few in Canada, that come with the same concerns, the same questions, the same obstacles that they experience, the same opportunities, the same things that get them excited. And so it's fun to be able to share that. And I think it's really valuable perspective so that you feel like you're not alone, and hopefully it'll give you some encouragement. So what is this number one most common missed opportunity in hygiene? It's identifying and treating periodontal disease. So it's not some new sexy high-tech tool that, I'm trying to convince you to use. It is getting back to the basics. And so you might be rolling your eyes and thinking, okay, we're talking about this again. And maybe that's just me because I've been talking about this for 20 years, but it still is the number one thing that dental teams need support with, that they're really working on either refining an existing perio protocol or creating one because maybe they had one in the past and they've had a complete change in their hygiene department. And now they don't know what happened to the perio protocol. It's just nothing's happening, right? There's little diagnosis. There's very few perio procedures happening in hygiene, and they're just not sure where all of that work went, where all of that those systems went, and they're ready to rebuild that. And we're seeing that a lot now in the industry is a desire to rebuild, a desire to rebuild, a desire to create consistency, a desire to get back to a predictable nature in hygiene. Now that we're seeing more teams have an established hygiene department. So there's been a lot of turnover in many practices over the last few years. I'm seeing some of that settling now. We talked about some of that in season 1. And so now is that time to really rebuild. And so I'm going to lead this off with some stats. So we, again, have had the opportunity to speak with, see a little peek inside the dental hygiene department in hundreds of practices just in the last few years. And I would say significant amount over the last 20 years, right? Thousands. And then we've had the opportunity to really literally get inside these practices because we go into the practices that we coach and really see what some of these obstacles are that are holding them back and where they really have breakthroughs. And that's what I want to share with you in season 2. Share with you some resources for these breakthroughs. Some are free, some involve working with us. There might even be something that I recommend outside of Inspired Hygiene. But I want you to feel encouraged by this. I want you to see where you have an opportunity to escape burnout, escape the prophy trap that so often creates burnout, and just open your mind to where this opportunity is and how you can create, whether you are a clinical leader, whether you're a business leader, whether you're a dental team member, whatever your role is, how you can contribute to the triple win for your team, for your patients, and for your practice. All right, so let's get into some of these stats. So this took a bit of digging, and I'm going to share this with you as clearly and concisely as I can. And this comes from some of our internal data metrics in Inspired Hygiene, because we collect a lot of data on dental practices. And I will say that our most common client that reaches out to us is a general dental practice. We also frequently work with prosthodontic practices that have dental hygienists, or sometimes they're a combo of a GP and a pros practice. We also work with perio practices, and there is a lot of opportunity to refine perio diagnosis and treatment protocols in hygiene in perio practices too. I know that sounds surprising. It's always surprising to me, but it's really fun to really even see what is possible and available there. And so I keep saying I'm going to get into these stats. So let's do it. All right. So since 2021, so right now at the recording of this, we're mid-year in 2025. So since 2021, we have spoken to nearly 400 practices or small groups of practices that are interested in working with Inspired Hygiene. Now, not all of those chose to move forward with coaching with us. However, we were able to get at least a conversation with them. And right at about 300 of those actually shared a few points of data with us from their hygiene departments. So what we do is we do what's called a discovery meeting, and we ask them to send us a few data points. How many hygienists do you have? They send us some procedure count for the last 6 months in their practice, and it gives us the opportunity to see where they are and where there is some immediate opportunity for them to grow. And again, we look at this, we look right off the bat at their perio potential, their perio opportunity, and then we show them what could be possible with coaching and how others have been able to do that. So right at 300 of those shared this data with us. And if we compile all that data from all of those 300 practices, that represents over 1.2 million patients in recare. Okay. So think about this. What I'm sharing with you is not a hunch. This is not only my opinion, and my opinion is based on experience. This is based on data. This is based on data that dental practices voluntarily shared with Inspired Hygiene. And this represents, in those practices, 1.2 million active patients in recare. This is not how many patients of record do you have. This is based on recare procedure counts. So how many perio maintenance did they do? How many profis did they do in a 6-month period? Okay. Now, if we take that and we compare that number of patients in recare to the number of quads of scaling root planing that they reported, and we do a little math around that, what that translates to is roughly 5% of those patients in recare in the time that they reported that data received active periodontal therapy. 5%. 5%. I'm just going to let that sink in for a minute. So if we go to what the ADA, the AAP, the CDC says about the prevalence of periodontal disease, it is around 50%. And I would say there's data that shows that even patients, in their 20s have well-established periodontal disease. So this crosses all demographics. We talk to teams that are in, let's say you're in a college town. Let's say you're in an area that has a very high health IQ. And a lot of times they think, we just don't see much perio because we have a healthy, patient base. And that may be true. There certainly are swings in demographics and health IQ across geographic areas, 100%. However, I would say that if you're in one of those areas and your perio percentage is 10%, that that is not statistically representative of what you are likely to see in your patient base. Now, there are some areas where 80% of the patients that they see have some level of periodontal disease, and there are some areas where 20% have some level of periodontal disease. But if you're at 0%, if you're at 5%, and I'm going to tell you how you can determine where you are, then there is a huge opportunity in your practice to up-level your periodontal diagnosis and treatment systems. And I would say, we just showed that 300 out of 300 practices, every one of them had opportunity to expand. And some more than others, right? Some more than others. But even those that had a perio percentage in the 20s, when we really dig in and look, very often that is being carried by perio maintenance. And there's a need for additional active therapy, meaning scaling root planing and other treatments with their patient base. Okay. So if we took that same data from those 300 practices, and then we run it through our Perio Percentage Calculator, and I'm going to show you how to find that. That is a formula that combines periodontal maintenance, scaling root planing, Profi, puts it in a little math formula, and gives us this perio awareness percentage. But if we take all that data that we collected, it still puts them right at about 10%. So the perio percentage average of all those practices was about 10%. Now, that seems low to me, and I see this every day. I'm like, surely out of 300 practices, really the average is 10% still? So I went further into our data. And what we do on these discovery meetings is we then put their data into slides where we can really show them where their starting point is. And so I went into that and I just randomly selected 20 practices that had sent us their data, and we had actually done a presentation for them with their data. And those perio percentages ranged from 0% to 21% out of those 20 randomly selected, practices that I had spoken to in the last 3 to 4 years. And that average was 10%. So I would say that is the average. I would say that that is the average perio percentage of the top 20% of dental practices. And that's a pretty bold statement, but that's what I would say. And the reason I say that is because typically dental practice owners, dental leaders that reach out for help from a coach, from a consultant, they typically are in the top 20% of producers in dentistry. They're in the top 20% of clinicians. They're taking high level CE. They have technology in their practice. They invest in their team. They've hired consultants. They have strategic advisors like dental focused CPAs. So these are not the average dental practice. These are the top 20%. And even out of those, the perio percentage is at 10%. So here's what I would encourage you to do. I would encourage you, first and foremost, I'm going to show you now how you can find this for yourself. Okay, here's how you can find this for yourself. I'm going to share my screen for those of you that are watching on YouTube, and for those of you that are listening, I'm going to narrate this. So if you go to inspiredhygiene.com, and you click on the resource guide, you're going to see that tab at the top of the website. You go to our resource guide, you're going to see all kinds of free things there. And I'm going to share some of these over the next few episodes of the podcast. But the one at the very top is our Perio Percentage Calculator tool. Okay. So I encourage you to click on that, and you're going to see an image of it. And this is a fillable PDF. You're just going to submit your name, your email address. You'll get on our email list so you can keep up with what we're offering. And I try to really provide cool content and insight for you on a regular basis, but you can always unsubscribe. But get this Perio Calculator tool. It's going to help you see where you are in your practice. And it has a guide there that's going to give you some sense of, hey, if you're a 0 to 20%, this needs immediate attention, right? There's bleeding in your practice, literally, right? There are patients in your practice that are bleeding. And this is going to give you kind of a wake up call and an opportunity to see where you are. So remember that the average of these 300 practices was about 10%, and see where you are in comparison to that. If you are higher, I would say, than 15 or 20%, that you've likely put some effort into creating a perio protocol, but maybe it's not performing the way that you hope right now. Or maybe, like I said, you've had some turnover in your hygiene team and it's not consistent, right? Maybe you've got one hygienist that is working to that protocol, and the others just haven't fully been introduced to it, or they're not familiar. They don't believe in it quite yet, right? They just haven't had that opportunity to really embrace it and put their stamp on that as well, and really make that their own. And I would say it's time to look into that. It's really time to look into that. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about how this happens. So again, we talked about the majority of these practices are top tier practices. If I look back 20 years when I started coaching teams with Inspired Hygiene, even before that, I was coaching with another company. When we saw low perio percentages, what I would encounter, and it wasn't that unusual, is I would go into the practice and we observe. The first half a day is we're just there. We're there to be a trusted advisor, answer questions, that kind of thing, and just be there to observe, see how we can help. I would very often observe that there were not even periodontal probes in the tray, in the instrument setup. That I don't see very often anymore. And I believe that it is because of the oral systemic link awareness. We're at least recognizing, hey, this is not just about losing teeth. This is about increased risk for heart attack, stroke, and type 2 diabetes, right? This is about helping patients manage their autoimmune conditions and any other inflammatory conditions they might have. So I believe as an industry, we've gotten better at that. The other thing that I would see routinely 20 years ago was no perio charts at all. So no perio charts anywhere in the patient charts. Maybe there were some notes about an area that was a 4 millimeter pocket or deeper. I would say that is better as well. I would say now these practices that hire us that we're working with, again, they're in that top, I would say 20%. They at least are getting pocket depths. They're at least getting pocket depth. So that means that there's some awareness of we need to be collecting this data and at least doing a preliminary look at the patient's periodontal status. But the thing that we still see, number one thing that is missing, and the number one critical thing that's missing from these perio charts is bleeding. We also do virtual chart audits. So when a client engages with us, a practice engages with us, one of the first things we do is a deep dive analysis. We call it our hygiene growth roadmap. And in that is a virtual chart audit. So now we are seeing, and since 2021, we have audited over 1,500 clinical charts. And this is what we see. We see that there are pocket depths recorded, but very little bleeding recorded. So there's still inadequate documentation, and often the clinical documentation in the perio chart or the x-rays doesn't match what's in the notes. So when we look at these 1,500 clinical patient charts, 51% of them had current bite wings that were of diagnostic quality, meaning a bite wing should show the bone level and should show certain teeth. And only 51% had diagnostic quality radiographs that you could see the bone level. 37% of those charts had all pocket depths recorded in the last 12 months. So 37% is better than 0 or 5%, which we used to see in the past, but still there's a huge, huge opportunity for improvement there. And 44% of those 1,500 charts had a mention of bleeding in the notes, but it was nowhere on the actual perio chart. So I'm sharing all of this with you. I'm sharing those stats from our chart audits, and then also from the data, the procedure counts that practices send to us. I'm sharing this to tell you that this is still the number one missed opportunity in hygiene. And it is so accessible to you. There is so much information here with Inspired Hygiene that's free. I'm going to go through some things that you can do in this season of the podcast to really start creating awareness with your team and to know, how do I start implementing this? And I'll share with you here as we wrap up, what are some of the reasons why this happens? Why have we gotten to this point? Number one is there's very little oversight with dental practices, right, on clinical effectiveness. There's a huge gap between the prevalence of periodontal disease in most practices and what's actually being treated. That is what you have heard in these stats that I've shared with you. I don't believe that is intentional. I don't believe that the dental teams intentionally neglect that. But here's the thing, your intention is not what's being judged if you're ever caught in the middle of a dental malpractice case, or if you're ever brought before the board. It's not your intention that they're going to judge. It's what you actually did and what you documented. What I believe happens, because I've seen it over and over, is there so many complexities that are going on in a dental practice, and man, talk about that the last 5 years. We could unpack that for days. But here's what we see. Some of the reasons why this happens, and we'll talk more throughout the season of what you can do about it, but complacency and old habits, just being in a rut, right? Seeing the same patients over and over, and we get what I call bleeding blindness. We see the same patients over and over. They look the same every time we see them. They have the same areas that are bleeding, and we think they're not getting any worse. But what's actually happening below the surface is these patients are carrying chronic inflammation. And as dental hygienists and dentists, you don't always know what else is going on with this patient. They don't always know. They don't always know that in their body is blocked arteries or is insulin resistance. They don't know those things very often. And so when they're going through their days with this chronic inflammation, that as hygienists, you're seeing it day in and day out. We're not helping reduce that inflammation, right? That complacency and those old habits. The other reason then is there's no system. So I see it your hygienist, you see it, you think, okay, we need to do something about this, but I don't even know how to start this conversation with my team. Is the doctor even going to be open to this? Doctors think the same thing. How do I even start this conversation to my team? I feel like the hygienists are a little resistant to doing anything different. But we really got to get a handle on this. And what I find is when we open the conversation, most of the time, everybody wants the same thing. They're just not sure how to get there. So another reason is the clinical leader's not concerned about it. So a hygienist might say, we have all these patients that are bleeding, and the clinical leader, maybe there's associates that, want to get to the restorative treatment, and they're really not seeing the importance of getting that foundation healthy and addressing whole body health through oral care. This is a thing. This happens. You guys see it in your practices. Remember, the team will never go where their leader's not willing to take them. So as a clinical leader, if you're not willing to set these systems up and really look carefully at your practice and where you can improve, your team is likely not going to do it for you, right? You've got to lead that. Having other priorities is an obstacle. You can't do everything in one day. You can't do everything at the same time, right? A lot of us in the industry have been managing a lot the last few years, and there have been other priorities. Some of them are just having a stable team. And so you haven't been able to address it. Scheduling is a huge thing that we still hear. Scheduling backlogs. We addressed this in one of the previous episodes. I want to say it was episode 3 or 4. Go back and look at season 1. It was episode 3 or 4. We talk about this hygiene backlog. Huge contributor to why periodontal disease is not being treated right now, because the hygienists think, gosh, even if I worked with doctor and we made a diagnosis today, I can't even get this patient in for 4 months. So what am I going to do? Like build up this sense of urgency and then say, hey, we can see you in December, and it's August. So, what am I going to do? I'm just going to do the best I can today and check it the next time. And then that cycle continues for years. And then that leads to running over and burnout and all of these things. I would say outdated knowledge is another reason why this happens, is not seeking new information or not being open to new information, new developments in periodontal diagnosis and treatment. And I would say another two that are really, really prominent and that folks don't talk about as much is being embarrassed that this has gone on this long. And what are my patients going to think? Or what is my team going to think if we address this now? And here's the thing. I heard this from Oprah years ago. We do the best we can with the information we have. And when we know better, we can do better. So we just have to put the past in the past. We can only change the future, right? So we can only move forward with what we know. And here's the thing. We hit this with our coaching and our programs. I'm going to share a little bit about that with you in just a minute. We hit this right off the bat. Your patients know, you've talked to them about bleeding in the past. Go back and look at that and say, hey, we've talked about this in the past. It's not getting any better. It's time to do something different, right? And when you can bring the patient alongside you in the diagnosis and educate them really to what's going on and tie that into what's important to them, then they're going to be grateful for that. And our clients are always, always pleasantly surprised at how receptive their patients are to this, even if they've been seeing these patients for 10 years. And hey, I get it. It's a valid concern. And I will tell you too, again, all of our coaches are hygienists. I'm a hygienist. We have all been there. And getting out of your comfort zone is not easy. But it is important to stay relevant and to give our patients what they need. So here are a few resources to help you. I shared with you that Perio Calculator tool. You can grab that, see where you are, and figure out what you want to do with it. I'm going to give you some more resources on the upcoming episodes. At Inspired Hygiene, we provide hands-on in your practice coaching. We have an incredibly strong track record of results. You can go on our website under client success and see case study after case study. And you can see how they improved their perio percentage. They started right where you are, right? And they they really worked together as a team, and they made a huge impact in their patient care and in their experience, their own experience day to day in their practice. The other thing is, depending on when you're listening to this episode, in the fall of 2025, early fall of 2025, we are releasing our 2025 completely updated version of our Perio Protocol online bootcamp. And you can find the details on that at periobootcamp.com. And we open this up for a short window of time, once or twice a year, for folks to purchase that. This bootcamp is a critical part, an integral part of our coaching that we do with clients, our private coaching, because it is a foundational map to creating your periodontal diagnosis, enrollment, and treatment system, and it's extremely detailed. And if you go over to periobootcamp.com, depending again on when you're listening to this, if you're lucky and you're in early September, you might be able to grab that and purchase that right now. If not, you'll see where you can get on the wait list, and we'll let you know when that's ready, and you'll be able to get a little taste of that boot camp when you get on that wait list. We're going to send you access to the first session, so you'll see a little bit about what that looks like. And that first session is really compelling too, to see where the potential is in your practice with treating periodontal disease in a more comprehensive way. So thank you for this. Stay tuned for more in the upcoming episodes. I'm really excited to share this and help you tap into this and create a win for you, regardless of your role in the practice. Create a win for the team, for your patients, and for your practice overall. So until next time, thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Inspired Hygiene Podcast. We hope you got a ton of value and some things that you can really take away and implement now. So as always, we invite you, if we can help you in any way to optimize your hygiene department, head on over to inspiredhygiene.com. And as always, stay inspired.